because today we're in for a good one. We're talking all about building an influencer program in 2024 with Meredith and Micah. But before I bring them to the stage, I wanted to say a couple words about Motion. So you might be wondering, why do we host events like this? And the main reason is Motion is the home for creative strategy. But you might be wondering, what does creative strategy mean? So the first thing that I like to call out is that creative is the number one lever for success in all of your paid social advertising. But what we also know is from our audience, especially, there are two types of teams, people, and brains that are involved. On one hand, we have our media buying folks who are more analytical and data driven. And on the other side, we have our creative folks who are exactly that, creative and conceptual. They need to operate in lockstep to succeed, but there's sometimes a natural gap that's created. So when I'm referring to creative strategy, what I'm ultimately referring to is how do we bring together the two sides of the brains, people, and teams so you're generating the most revenue possible. And what I'll call out finally is to make this happen currently, it looks something like this, a good old spreadsheet. Media buyers, how many hours do you put into this thing? Don't be shy. And creative team members, come on, we're talking creative. How do you look at something like this and make decisions? So at Motion, what we do is we make it really easy to analyze, visualize, and then share in action upon these insights along the way. And I think I have a pretty big update here. So if I can get a quick drum roll in the chat, and I'll kick myself off. I don't even know if I can drum roll, so I might have asked you to do something impossible. But let's fake drum roll at least, because at Motion, what we've done is we've actually just recently launched a new feature called Launch Analysis. So what this is and why I want you all to be excited is I saw so many people in this chat and in this event who live outside of the ad account. And how many times have you folks had to tap your media buyer on the shoulder to say, what's going on? Did we launch? Only to have it go into the abyss. And media buyers, how much time do you put into answering those type of questions around what's actually working and what's not? So with Launch Analysis, we make it super simple to see what is actually launched on a given time frame, what's reached your statistically relevant spend to know if you should look at it or not, and most importantly, what's won, so we can all align on the same stories and then determine what we do next along the way just to make this come to life. So if you're interested in learning more about this, we'll drop something in the chat where you can check it out, but just wanted to make sure everyone was up to speed on what we have going on here. Fantastic, y'all. I think the only thing to call out is, like, from a housekeeping standpoint, we have an amazing community that you can all see participating. I will say, questions, if you look to the top right, you are going to see a chat and a Q&A tab. Throw those questions into the Q&A because Mare and Micah are going to absolutely smash it at the end of this. And then what I'll also call out is where I need you all to have my back, the recording. So from the recording standpoint, if anyone asks, yes, it will be launched. So please, please, please jump into the chat and let everyone know, okay? I've said 1.5 million words, so now it's time. I want to bring these two to the stage, and please give them a warm welcome, and this is going to be a good time, y'all. So welcome Micah and Meredith to the stage, please. Oh, yeah. Welcome to the party, guys. How's it going?
That's great. Thanks for having us.
Good to see you, Evan. It's always a good time. Happy to be back.
This is incredible. And Micah says, be back. You know, we run it back 2.0. We see the people in the chat going crazy for it. So everybody, just to bring you all up to speed of who these two are. So Micah is the co-founder and CMO of 0 to 1. Meredith is the VP of Marketing and Operations at 0 to 1. They are both absolutely incredible, y'all. They have 5 exits under their belts, 1 IPO in their bag of wins. Micah, like you mentioned before, we've done this before, and he dropped some amazing gems on influencer marketing. But I'm really excited for y'all to meet Meredith. So a little birdie told me that she's literally #1 in the world when it comes to anything influencer, affiliate, community, and program building. So I think we're in for a treat. I don't have better words to say than that. So welcome, guys. Welcome.
Appreciate it.
For having us. Thank you.
Amazing. So everybody, let's make sure to throw those questions just into the Q&A tab. And if there's anything like you all want to know, prompt the chat. They'll throw it into the chat and can do it that way. But I'm actually going to step out. They're going to step in and then just bless our ears and knowledge with everything that we need to know. And I'll come back for Q&A. So rock it, y'all. I'll see y'all in a bit. Okay.
Let's go.
Amazing.
Yeah, like Evan said, please use the chat feature, drop questions. We want this to be conversational, engaging. We've got a lot to dig through here, but certainly want to involve everyone as much as possible. And just to quickly kick it off here, just background on us as an agency. So this is some of the clients that we service today. We typically are working with category leading or disruptive brands in either tech or e-commerce, some traditional brick and mortar, you see Lowe's in there. So we're category agnostic, but I think we're really trying to innovate around what we're seeing today is the biggest opportunity for not just our agency, but for brands as a whole, which is really this tectonic shift from e-commerce to what would be called social commerce. And the emergence of really influencer as a channel and influencer as a community building tactic. And so to quickly set the stage, I'm going to talk as fast as possible here because I want to get to Meredith, who's going to dive deep. She is, as Evan mentioned, probably the number one in the world when it comes to tactically building and implementing these communities. So I want to make sure we go deep on this conversation and give you guys a lot of in the weeds tactics you can walk away from this conversation being able to implement. But first, I'm going to talk about how we think about influencer. I think a lot of the conversation that we're having with brands today is shifting the mindset from the old way, which is influencer as a tactic, which we all have tried at this point, to what I would say influencer as a channel. Influencer as a tactic, I mean, most traditionally, would be influencer as engagement awareness tactics driven largely by a brand team who owns these relationships and are deployed in more of a paid capacity, paid relationships. There's other tactics that we've all heard of and tried, influencer seeding at scale. Sometimes this is for EMV, awareness impressions, but also sometimes to support growth teams. And then there's just a ton of tactics for different teams to use. But behind the scenes, what has happened is you have the media buying landscape has shifted. And so you have media buyers who are dealing with erratic acquisition costs. You're having brand teams that are struggling. You see this often, struggling to fill the content pipeline. And that is what the growth needs to scale their account and to support their testing structure. And then what we're seeing oftentimes is you have a siloed approach to influencers. So you have traditional brand approach. You've got growth teams who are trying to tap it in different ways. I think the last conversation we had here on Emotion webinar was about UGC and our strategy to leverage creators to build ad content to support scale. And so growth teams are working kind of in their own silo to support that as well. And so as a result of that, you'll have multiple agencies across a marketing department supporting a variety of tactics, bloated costs, bloated P&Ls, and not much cross-pollination or collaboration. So you can go to the next slide here. And with all of those, it's looking at influencer as a tactic to achieve a set of deliverables, which I think is the downfall and where a lot of people are seeing mixed or limited success. And that is because you have a campaign that has a start date and you have a campaign that has an end date. And so with that, you're going to have influencers who are largely disengaged after the deliverable set is complete. You're going to have a lot of different costs and support and agency structures. And so the conversation we're having today with brands is reframing how they think about influencer, which is influencer as a channel in the same way that you would think about Meta, for example, media buying. You're looking at more of a full funnel approach to influencer with a variety of tactics on a longer time horizon, say 6, 12, 18 months, where you are looking to increase ROAS over time and decrease CAC. And so we can go to the next slide here. One of the biggest tactics that we're seeing today that has emerged over the last 2 years is building influencer as a community, as its own channel. It's a branded community of owned influencers. It doesn't exist on a singular channel, oftentimes cross-channel, and it often has a branded name. And so you have big companies like Target, Amazon, Walmart at that scale who are really investing heavily into influencer as a channel. And then more traditional e-com companies who are doing a fantastic job of this, like HexClad, Obvi, Sakara is a great example. But this is an opportunity that sits at the intersection of affiliate teams, brand and loyalty teams, and then performance teams. And so having those work together, really owning that community, building relationships over time, which can be a white hot channel for one of your highest ROAS channels. It could, an influencer community and a healthy benchmark could be easily 10 to 20% of your revenue. And support the secondary value, support other efforts across your entire marketing organization, including being a pipeline of content for paid teams, and supporting even partnership teams. So we can go to the next slide here. And in terms of tactics, there's a few, and probably all of them are involved in a healthy influencer affiliate community. That is product seeding, which is your lowest risk, minimal investment, unpredictable outcome. This is a volume game where you have a no strings attached commitment, gifting product to influencers, and then using that as a way to have them introduce to your brand, create content, potentially even whitelist that content for ads. Problem with that is oftentimes that content is not direct response. It's at the beginning of a relationship with an influencer. So you're getting a lot of like unboxing or thank you type of content. It can work, but it's a bit more of a spray and pray approach, a good introduction to the brand, but it often kind of ends at that point. You got affiliate communities, which is more of a commission basis, partnering with influencers to create content for your brand and get paid on performance. You've got more of a partnership approach, which is that high risk, large investment and more measurable outcome. This is what you would call maybe more traditional. Partnerships could involve like brand collaborations, developing a product around an influencer, or sometimes you're even seeing influencers who are becoming a co-owner of the brand over a long time horizon. And then paid collaborations, this is flat fee plus commission. So an influencer affiliate community or influencer as a channel often involves all of these tactics, different capacities, but looking at it with more of a full funnel approach. In the background, what we have here, and I know everyone has heard the news around TikTok Shop and is paying attention heavily to that. The customer journey is evolving. So omni-channel would be, how things were. You may see a billboard, somebody would Google the product, they would hit your website, they would check out. Over time, that customer journey is shortening. And so iOS 14 updates, you'd have an ad driving to a website. Maybe they caught in a retargeting ad and then finally check out. Post iOS 14, creative is king. Oftentimes we're working with influencers or UGC creators for ad content. They could drive to website, retargeting ad to checkout. And now we're seeing that cycle shorten into one step. And so it's the rise of social commerce. And you've got TikTok Shops, obviously the one that's, that we're all paying attention to right now. But beyond that, you've got Meta on the heels of TikTok Shop, who's developing a pixel for pixel copy of TikTok Shop, as well as Amazon, who's investing heavily as well into everyone is fighting to keep that conversion event in platform. And so we see this as the biggest shift of our generation. You actually go back a slide here, Meredith. Biggest shift of our generation, and it's here to stay. So we've got an insane amount already. This is 2022 data, but $724 billion in revenue on social commerce. That is moving in the next couple of years into the trillions. Live shopping is projected at $55 billion. And TikTok itself is kind of pioneering this, but we're waiting for all these other players to kind of get into the game. And you can go to the next slide. And I think with this, these are just some numbers from TikTok Shop recently. We may have seen some of this. Guru Nanda is sort of the darling of TikTok Shop right now. 16.5 million in revenue. That number is probably outdated at this point. It's probably higher. And this is happening fairly frequently. I think one thing that people don't see when it comes to Guru Nanda in particular, TikTok Shop's not a cash grab. Like, you don't sign up for TikTok Shop and start printing money. I think one thing that I found incredibly interesting is the founder of Guru Nanda is really investing into building his influencer affiliate community and is involved in building. He's got channels on WhatsApp, and he's working on a one-to-one basis, building relationships with the influencers in his program. And so as a result of that, you've got creators who feel a huge affinity for the brand. They feel connected to the founder and his story. And he's working to build those relationships beyond just, posting their products inside a TikTok shop. And so we're excited about really this opportunity to build influencer community, influencer as a channel. And then even looking at Amazon. So Amazon for us as an agency has been recently been what we see as the quickest path to revenue. Oftentimes for brands, they're investing heavily into keeping people in platform the same way that TikTok and Meta are. So there's Amazon Finds, there's Amazon Inspiration, different components of the Amazon app where they're using influencers to curate product categories. They're having influencers create content in platform, and incredible in terms of driving revenue pretty quickly for brands. And so you can go to the next slide. And with this, there's this community flywheel. I'm going to introduce Meredith. You can kind of take over here. She is working in the weeds with these brands, implementing every step of this flywheel, regardless if you're more of a traditional D2C and you have an e-commerce platform like Shopify or more traditional brick and mortar. There's different types of structures for this that we'll walk through and hopefully show some examples of.
Yeah, perfect. And this is, again, we try to think through the lens of a flywheel. The goal with these programs is it's a crawl, walk, run approach ultimately. So we want to start with, kind of like minimum viable product. In a lot of ways, it's a very sort of entrepreneurial approach. But the goal obviously is to start with a really strong branded community. You want to give your influencer affiliates and these communities that you're growing for an evergreen sort of long-term partnership, sort of center of gravity. So working to tie it back to the brand's sort of vision and mission, give them a home ultimately, which we'll get into in a little bit around the community management side of things. And ultimately that's sort of the anchor point. From there, it's like the software stack. Tech is a big piece of how we think about scaling these programs. It's vital to its enablement. Obviously, the affiliate sort of component of this would be the like discount and link sharing, the performance basis. So the sort of analytical components is definitely driven through the tech integrations. So we'll touch on that today. And then the core mechanics of these programs really come down to offer incentives. Awareness tactics with influencers, paid campaigns, influencers at the end of the day, their business is unto themselves, especially in this social commerce space. So ultimately you have to come to them with a compelling offer and a strong sort of incentive strategy. We work often, that means like a sort of CPA basis, cash commissions, but there's also like a lot of intangible value you can deliver through these communities as well, as far as like early access to products. Again, building a hub for the community where they can gather and sort of info share, and there's sort of network effects that come out of that. So we think, again, you want to think very focused, very just like cut and dried around what the sort of cash incentives are to get people engaged in the community, and then think about how you deliver long-term value to the influencers that are participating with you. And that means like creating laddered effects, giving them ways to mature into the program, to deepen their relationship with the brand. And again, as Micah mentioned at the top, like those brand partnerships are kind of like the top of the pyramid. Influencer and customer recruitment, that's sort of the fourth piece of this. Like, how are we getting people into the community? We'll go through some of our recruitment tactics today and kind of how we think about scaling top of funnel for a community. And then the sort of ongoing engagement and sort of inspiration that goes into managing a community, keeping them engaged, keeping them excited, keeping them ultimately working as an ambassador for your brand. And then the sort of other component there is creative strategy, content production. Again, I think Evan set this up perfectly. We do have to think through these programs through both like an analytical lens. Like, again, we measure everything. We'll get into that. But also the creative strategy is such a big part of how we keep these programs engaged, keep them healthy, and ultimately drive revenue and sort of optimize the program. And then finally, the paid social extensions, whitelisting, huge content pipeline out of an evergreen influencer affiliate community. So how do we approach, using that content, disseminating it to paid media teams, using it for brands? Like it's really a foundational tactic in a lot of ways that can drive, again, partnerships, affiliate, growth marketing, lifecycle retention marketing. It kind of touches everything. All right. So as far as, influencer as a channel, what we like to, the way we like to kind of frame this is like any new channel, it requires investment. So the advantage of building an influencer affiliate community is that there is a tremendous ROI potential, a lot of long-term growth potential that comes out of it. There are two cost centers to these. We have the sort of fixed costs in the community, which would be obviously softwares to power it, your agency and or like internal resources that you're dedicating to the program. And then the variable costs would be commissions, payouts, things that are kind of tied to community performance. Those will rise with the community's growth in a sort of a fractional sort of way, but those fixed costs can be sort of capped, and that allows for like upside, huge amounts of upside in the community after we get through that sort of initial learning phase. And it gives the ultimately brands an owned sort of channel for revenue, new customer acquisition, and then content that can support their paid media channels. So super efficient strategy, and it's one of the big reasons we're seeing, excuse me, huge amount of investment and interest in these programs. Trying to keep an eye on chat too. Okay. So influencers a channel. This is the content funnel we've been sort of alluding to. So our sort of approach to this, we start with looking for top creators out there. So we'll look at sort of a brand's core audience. We'll go and do prospecting around creators with, again, follower counts, engagement's another big piece of that component. That fit that ICP, and then test wide across a number of different sort of archetypes. We'll use mass outreach to execute that, essentially onboard them into the program, nurture them to create content, and then effectively on the backside of this, we'll be able to see organic content that comes out of the community with Signal. So again, because we tie a performance component to everything, we're able to see not only content that engages well, but also content that drives sales and new customer acquisitions. We can go back to paid media teams, put whitelisting spend behind that, and that allows us to end up with a huge funnel of high performing influencer content on the back end. So we'll break down those mechanics a little bit, but that's sort of our approach to this as a channel. All right, program pillars here. So what's cool about influencer is that we have found, again, you really can activate a wide range of influencers. Who is an influencer at the end of the day? Of course, there are, celeb and macro influencers. Those are often you see engaged as either, revenue participants in the company, big brand ambassadors. But we also see a tremendous amount of revenue being generated out of customer affiliates, like customer programs as well. A lot of micro influencers in this space do very well in the affiliate sort of environment because they have, again, if you get brand alignment and you have engagement around their content and they have a vested audience that also aligns with the brand, they can be really powerful influencers in your community as well. So we think about it through the lens of referral loyalty. That's a component that we think through for these programs. That's an arm into it. Obviously, we do our own sort of influencer recruitment. There's the community management component. And then, as mentioned, the creative strategy, extensions for paid, and then the efficiency automations that we develop as we build the program with software partners. So I'm going to step through each one of these. I'm going to try to keep it moving because I want to make sure we have time for Q&As at the end. Okay, so referral loyalty. The beauty of a customer and thinking through referral loyalty, I think, points-based systems exist. There are pros and cons to different sort of softwares, different approaches to this. The thing that we've seen become very powerful is integrating your referral loyalty system with a sort of tiered or laddered approach into more of an influencer affiliate or like long-term influencer relationship. So the idea is that, your recurring customers are pre-qualified for brand alignment. You already know they're the biggest advocates they could be for your brand, and they're pre-seeded. So from like an efficiency perspective, they already have your product. They already know and love your product. And many of them have, they may be micro creators, they may even be nano, but they can be very powerful brand advocates. So we advocate for a really simple rewards program. We have a couple of software sort of call outs here for like our Shopify direct to consumer brands out there. Really easy, fully integrated software stacks that can power both a simple rewards program that's based on like very simple offer mechanics: give X, get Y. Incentives are issued as store credits, which helps with LTV, and then people can earn cash back on purchases to be redeemed in store. It's great. So it can be fully automated post-purchase. And then as soon as people basically purchase, you have the ability to issue them a referral link or code. And then even as like, you could get as grand as a co-branded landing page. This is a software partner that we have called Super Affiliate. They do this at scale. It makes it very easy for you to set up these pages. So the future here is really enablement of your core customers and micro influencers all the way up to those big celebs. On influencer recruitment, the goal really here for recruitment is to drive program opt-ins. And so we think about it through like the lens of a marketing funnel. We look top of funnel. The first thing we want to address with these programs is how do we get signal around people opting into the program, posting content on behalf of the brand, and ultimately driving sales. Focusing on top of funnel allows us to create compounding effects around earned media value, which is a sort of like the first step to achieving a blended program ROI in the positive direction. But we take, again, that crawl, walk, run approach to scale. We start by testing really wide, and then leaning into the sort of influencer segments where we're seeing really good signal. As far as like how we do this, how we execute, there are a ton of software partners out there. We won't go into all of them. Our team leans heavily. I think we lost one on here. We use a software called Sorol. But Kalo Data is a great one if you're interested in the TikTok space. And then we couple basically our sort of influencer list building and prospecting through these softwares with a cold outbound email strategy tied with sort of cold outbound DMing strategy via Instantly, and then just Instagram DMs or TikTok DMs. Sorol was animated there. Okay. So again, in thinking through this through an analytical lens here, top of funnel, we test really everything. So we're going to test different influencer archetypes. We'll test subject lines, messaging, CTAs. And what this allows us to do is it's a measure ultimately of interest in the program. Obviously people's reply rate is a measure of, sort of our messaging strategy, and then opt-in rates is sort of an indication of offer strength. So really important to measure here.
Quick note on this too. I think you'll notice the sequence there. The sequence time frame is 11 days and 8 days. We always have a 5-part email follow-up sequence. We find oftentimes that influencers aren't responding until the 4th outreach attempt. And so if you are trying influencer outreach and it's one and done, either email or DM, and you're not seeing the results, one easy thing you can do is automate that outreach sequence and expanding your top of funnel. So oftentimes we are reaching out to 1,000+ influencers a week. We pull those lists. There's tons of different list building softwares. Meredith mentioned Sorol. It's probably one of the better ones for generating high quality lists that you could export. And then we'll use Instantly as the email software to create those drip flows. And so we'll have a 5-part outreach sequence that will deploy at scale using sometimes up to 50 emails that we generate for a brand to really hit that volume and make sure we're getting all the way through a 5-part sequence to get our opt-in rates up. And our open rates on these, is typically 90+%. And opt-in rates conservatively could be 10 to 20% of people we're reaching out to that will raise their hand and say, I want to join an influencer community. There's obviously a lot of communication that happens with our team and fielding. We call it first line communications, but responses that come through. Sometimes they want paid, sometimes they're not interested. And so you kind of have to navigate that with the coordinator, but the goal being to get them first to opt into the community.
Yeah, totally. And that's, again, why we start with, smaller lists and then can scale it out, obviously, to 1,000. Scale can go from there, but we want to begin to build that response bank early on and start to understand, again, what people's questions are about the products, about the program, and have all of that sort of really built out. And then from there, we can scale it. Some list building, the beauty of sort of where we're at with a lot of these softwares and what's available to people out there, we can really prospect around all sorts of different influencer behaviors. So like what an influencer talks about, what brands an influencer buys, what accounts they follow. And then obviously like influencer profile data. So their demographics, audience demos, which is really important when you're thinking about building these communities. It's important that you have obviously brand aligned influencers, but when it comes to a performance program, when it's about new customer acquisition, it's about sales, you want to make sure their demos are also aligned with your product and with your brand. Obviously, engagement rate's a big one to look at, but isn't always everything. But diehard fans is also another one that we can kind of peel into. That's a sort of feature that Sorrel offers. And then software and machine learning, more and more able to do lookalike searches based on AI, reverse brand searches, even the ability to search bio keywords. There's a lot that's available out there. If we have time at the end, we can come back and probably do a demo of this if that's of interest to anybody. But super cool. And so this will just screen share quickly through here, kind of how we look at this. So there's a lot of data out there. So we do, again, we want to cast a wide net, but once we find signal around a specific type of creator, we can then basically build lists off of their profile. And then on the outreach sort of side of things, Micah outlined kind of our outbound tactic around scale. DMs obviously also really, really effective, a good part of the strategy. We kind of layer them. So that we'll be sending emails to influencers, but also doing direct DMs, voice memos, making it personable, is really important. We're building community after all. So, we like to have fun with it, but we can set up we set up branded accounts for these creator communities. Require the brand ultimately to follow us back. So there's verification ultimately, but these channels then become great for outreach and then ultimately ongoing influencer education and community management.
And we'll have each coordinator who's doing outreach have 5 accounts that they stand up for the brand on behalf of the brand. And we'll do at least 20 DM outreaches a day per account. So that's at minimum 100 outreaches per day, per brand, per coordinator. And oftentimes the response rate, the activation rate we get off of DM outreach is much higher than we'll get off of cold email.
Yeah, totally. And then, so a note on scale too, because we wanted to touch on this. Don't want people that like building these communities takes time. And so it's very normal. And this is, when we're working with brands on the agency side, this is a conversation we try to kind of queue up front. It's normal to be upside down on program costs for these early sort of recruitment phases. Like any new channel, you've got to kind of invest in learning ultimately what's going to move the needle and how to optimize ultimately. So, I mentioned already, I got to turn my phone off. Sorry, guys. Again, the costs sort of associated with this. And let's just look at typical performance for an early program, Again, simple math. I don't want to go through this, get too sort of mathy in this, but again, assuming a $50 AOV, you got 1,000 prospects, 100 opt-ins, decent opt-in rate, and then 10 of those opt-ins convert monthly, and they convert about three sales essentially. That's about 1,500 monthly revenue, and then you've got media value coming off of 100 creators. So if you change nothing else around how you manage the community, like how you're encouraging them to post, if you focus on nothing else and just focus on 10xing your list size and top of funnel recruitment, it's you can just it's a 10x multiplier essentially, resulting in 13 and a half additional 13,500 in revenue, and then 900 additional creators contributing EMV, which is significant. And that's where your sort of, again, top line ROI starts to sort of even out, giving you length and runway essentially to then further optimize the community. So when we think about strategically how we build these programs, again, this is that sort of growing iterative approach to community building. And we try to measure everything, again, for the sake of insights, learnings, optimization, and then continued scale. In reality too, this is we don't have permission from this client yet to share, so we can't call this out. But this is some real data from a brand that we're working with. Again, you can see early on, started the engagement in October, learning phases, kind of slow growth, hit November, December, our ability to seed the community dropped off because they were focusing on holiday fulfillment. But in that time, we're growing basically our response bank, our community management practices. And then, effectively January, February, March, we've been focusing on scaling the community. out, and really starting to see true sort of program revenue coming through in the form of media value and revenue. And it's, again, that's where those like that content funnel really starts to like click into place.
And we're really seeing, just in terms of time frame, somewhere between 3 to 6 months for program profitability. And then from there, it can become your highest ROI channel in terms of ROAS. I mean, from that point, the scale is fairly infinite and it compounds. And this is not even factoring in the value you get off of the content pipeline to support your paid efforts. This is just off of direct attributable revenue within the program. And so the best companies here, within 12 to 18 months, I mean, it's feasible. You could see up to 10% plus of your overall GMV spend off of one of these communities.
Yeah, there are brands out there doing that for sure. Yeah, and this is ended that sort of growth curve there. This is just a screenshot from a media listening tool that we use to measure these things. Again, the beauty is it compounds. So we've got the current community in that puts out 48 million impressions on a monthly basis. And the more we bring people into the community, the bigger that sort of like grows. So we've seen this, again, it drives a ton of awareness, a ton of like lead volume to your website. And even if there isn't, there's attribution windows involved. So like we're measuring revenue off of direct sales from the influencer's link or discount code, but then there's all this like long-term value too that can also be attributed to these sorts of marketing efforts.
CPM here is sub $4, like for the program we're looking at now, which if you guys are doing product seeding and have an agency focused specific on that with KPIs around EMV or CPM, this community will spit off very similar, very aggressive CPMs, but also has the path to direct attributable revenue. So if you are thinking about product seeding as an awareness tactic, it makes sense to really invest in the community that does have a path to that direct return.
Yeah, I mean, this community is like sub 50 cents actually in program CPM. So it can get really, really efficient. And then the community management piece is, once we hit that sort of general profitability sort of equation, we really advocate to layer in community management. This is, strategic. It's a little labor intensive, but the value here is you drive program engagement through it. You can grow basically the volume of conversions and revenue per member in the community. So as you're basically layering in new members into the community, you're then sort of making the community more efficient. And that's really where you can start to attain really compelling ROAS and start to hit some super compelling CAC benchmarks as well. So like customer acquisition costs get really, really efficient here. In order to do this, we use social listening tools essentially to monitor the content. And then we, issue weekly and monthly community challenges to keep people excited, keep them engaged, one-to-one DMs, one-to-one coaching calls, webinars. I mean, there are lots of different ways to activate. Again, these are a few sort of social listening tools that we use, depending on kind of what our sort of software stack is and who we're working with. You want to say anything else, Micah?
I think with that, the coaching is really important. We take a one-to-one approach to this. And the reason why is because you'll have influencers who will post or creators who will post. They may not do best practices and it may not convert, but they're posting in their signal there. So for us, we'll see that. We'll say, hey, we love this content. Amazing job. We love that your favorite flavor was X. Have you considered including a link in bio, highlighting that link in your story, maybe doing a mini chat integration to drive more revenue? So we'll look for very tactical one-to-one opportunities to touch the creators that are posting to ultimately nurture them from active creator who's posting content to converting creator and ultimately having them be a high performer in the community that we can use for case studies and celebrate with the rest of the team. So at this stage, it's about nurturing and building that relationship and being very hands-on as their coach to their dream outcome, which is earning a ton in these communities.
Yeah, coaching, that we've really adopted that internally. I think that is sort of like, it's a really healthy framework, and it's like any good coach too. It's like also celebrating their wins, like when they're posting content, when they're converting, when they're hitting major milestones, making sure that they're feeling the love, not only through, obviously the incentives that are tied to everything, but also just that one-to-one touch. Okay, so why does community engagement matter? Again, if we look at our sort of the case study here, example, 10% opt-in, 10% community conversion rate, simple adjustment. you're scaling the program out to 10x, but you're also increasing the opt-in rate by like 2%. So making sure that, again, that sort of messaging optimizations that are happening. And then within the community, you're bumping up the community conversion rate by 5%. If you do all of those things together, that's an additional 25K plus in monthly revenue. And then again, that ongoing earned media value from over 1,100 additional creators in the community, all of which you can also use, you can coach and use to like develop content that fills your content pipeline and meets, it spits off sort of assets essentially that you can use for your paid media team license. There's just a ton of potential here if you take that really hands-on community approach. And then there are like even further, optimizations here. We try to measure as much as we can within the community so we can bring it back to like a human component here, which is really how we, you can optimize revenue. So you have an AOV, you can work on bumping up that average order value by focusing on, higher, more expensive products essentially, or limited time offers. And then again, moving the needle on number of conversions per affiliate in the program by 1 to 2 points, again, can have an outsized impact on revenue. And in terms of like, annual revenue and how you go and sort of defend these programs to like your C-suite and VPs, essentially, that investment can take an 18K baseline ARR program, which is sort of where we started the model, to like 702K. So really, it's just a very like tactical sort of day in and day out sort of process that ultimately is driven by that human coaching component and then software and optimizations. One of which, Micah mentioned is ManyChat. It's one that we're really leaning into right now. We're seeing a lot out in the influencer space. You may have seen it. I don't know if you see a sort of like a call to action, either verbal or in a caption where somebody's saying comment keyword, in this case, HexClad, to receive a DM with your 10% off discount link or code. It's powered by ManyChat or something similar to that. We love this tactic because it drives post engagement, which then supports an influencer's growth and commissions, makes them happy, makes us happy, and it helps them automate the link and code sharing component. So it takes out some of the human error component. And it's a great hack for big platforms like Instagram that doesn't allow direct link sharing within obviously captions. So super compelling, having a lot of fun with this right now. Creative strategy, content production. Again, the goal here is kind of to support your coaches and community management sort of goals. So this would be things like building out a resource hub and creator portal, building really great creative briefs, training videos and documents, case studies, influencer spotlights, live recorded webinars, even producing grab and go content. We've had some success with some of the brands that we work with like an entry level tier where people basically come in and are able to immediately start sharing their referral link. They may or may not have product or a full product set, but if they start converting, we're able to unlock more sort of incentives for them, and we can give them grab and go content to be successful with. So give them that co-branded landing page, give them some like playbooks to follow, help coach them and be successful in the program, and that you can help them, ultimately grow within the program and then grow revenue alongside that. This is an example. This is a Zendesk sort of simple version of this, like a sort of resource hub, which, can be like index, like a little sort of website, all the way out to, and I don't think I pulled any examples, but what we see more and more often, which is really compelling for social strategy, is like an dedicated Instagram channel that has, sort of onboarded stories, updates as far as like trending topics. This is a big thing like the Walmart program does or Amazon does. They'll publish like their top trending products. Their affiliates can come in, take basically that list of trending products, create simple green screen content sort of around it. That works really well for like the social affiliates. And then for brands that are trying to build evergreen content, it's really just about coaching and making sure they have access to new products. They have, new brand assets, and just basically arming them to be successful. All right. Sort of the fifth component here then is the extension into paid social. So, when these programs reach scale, they're big organic content pipelines. And so we really advocate, more and more for an integrated approach to influencer. Right, as an agency, sometimes we're positioned with the product partnerships team. Sometimes we're positioned with affiliates. Sometimes we're on the brand and influencer teams. But in all cases, the sort of content that comes out of this is a great way to unearth like new trends, brand CTAs that are happening organically around your brand out in the community. And then on the flip side, you can arm your community with creative strategies that are proven to convert. So, we have this data in our motion dashboards. So like, how can we take that and bring that back into the community and help them be more successful? So again, examples, I probably won't play through these, but again, these are a couple of pieces of organic content, really high quality content that came out of our HexClad community organically. We're able to go to these and see, again, high engagement content. It's performing well. Can we go back and whitelist some of this content or put sort of Spark ad spend behind it? It helps boost their awareness, helps boost the influencers' sales commissions, and obviously helps drive revenue for the brand. And then you can also do things like just secure the raw assets or secure the video asset itself for your paid media use. So we also see things like, like supercuts or like remix assets that we can use to test new hooks, CTAs, kind of repurpose for your ad library. And then the sort of sixth component here is efficiency and automation. So as mentioned, there's, in sort of execution, there's a lot to cover here. We've got sort of partnerships, affiliate, influencer, there's some email, SMS, there's customer service, community management, you've got production, there's sort of the data analysis. And then if there's like a tech implementation component, like an ops or product management sort of aspect. So as far as like skill sets, covers a wide range. I'm going to plug the agency life for a second. Agencies can be super helpful, especially early on in sort of building these programs, because it allows you to like leverage fractional sort of expertise. But there are a lot of other things you can lean into to help with scale and efficiency. There are networks. Obviously, this is an affiliate, sort of old school, traditional affiliate marketing. Like you've got networks you can plug in with sub affiliates. That's starting to crop up in the influencer space. We're seeing that now as well, where you can go out to like organized groups of influencers around sort of certain topics, have that network come into your community basically with a sort of rev share split out. I mean, there's this world is evolving so quickly. So there's a lot to kind of tap into, but it's really important to remember that at the end of the day, you're building a community. Influencers are humans. So it's really important to think through how to automate parts of the program, especially as you scale, that are like rote or impersonal, so that your team can really focus on that sort of one-to-one human touch. So Gatsby is a cool one we leverage in the social listening space. Again, the idea is to like use simple event-based APIs, webhooks, APIs to like automate emails, SMS, even DMs, which is something that Gatsby really specializes in. So we can say, we can do social listening and say after somebody posts 3 times, mentions the brand 3 times and is part of our program, automate this DM sort of like follow-up message. There's a lot of opportunity to do that to keep people engaged. And then our team can come in really with those like very opportunistic touch points. So I know we whipped through that. How are we doing with time, guys? Good. We can open it up to Q&A, Evan, if you want to. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, everybody. Like when we talk about deep and we talk about tangible, not only do we get platforms, not only do we get steps to actually make this happen and all the details. This is exactly why I'm so happy you both are able to join with us today. So that's incredible. It's incredible.
And we'll provide the deck after the fact. We realize we're covering a lot of ground here, and there may be follow-up questions. Happy to do follow-up conversations, answer any of those in more detail than we could cover in a 45-minute chat too.
Amazing. So there's a bunch of questions. I don't think we're going to get to them all. I think like one that's sitting, and I have the privilege of being able to ask the questions. So one that comes to mind for me is just like ownership of this work. So there's a ton of creative strategists. There's different creative team members here. There's media buyers here. There's management layers here as well. Who typically owns this workflow that you're describing right now?
Yeah, we have essentially, we recommend for our team how we structure this. We have one lead, essentially strategist. So ultimately they own the account. They own the success of the account. They're usually, a more sort of senior level strategist, comfortable with the data, comfortable with team leadership. And then sort of within that, we have campaign managers who are basically their sort of day in and day out is tied to the community's growth and success. And they take that role of the sort of community coach on and sort of lead that piece of it. And then we have, again, depending on the size and scale of the community, a number of coordinators that manage communications, recruitment, and sort of like the logistical sort of onboarding, question and answer, like community support, all those components.
Incredible. I saw a bunch of people jumping into the chat and being like, hey, how team size wise, how do we start to tackle? Where's the place to start? So that's helpful to know. The top upvoted question is from Charlie. So Charlie asks, do you feel influencer as a channel is fatiguing, as most brands have adopted this to some degree by now? How do you build out a strategy that stands out? So I think it leans closer to the first part of the question for like a meta response rather than a tactical.
Yeah. Short answer is no. I think the individual tactics in approaching it like that, maybe so. But if approached in this way, where you're looking at it longer time horizon, multiple tactics, and looking at that blended performance, because each tactic has a different sort of response return KPI. So if you are nurturing a community and pulling on it in different ways, so you're seeing value not just in the direct response on the affiliate program, but you're also getting content that's driving your performance efforts, then all of a sudden your costs associated with different agencies, your creative costs, they all come down, and you're leaning into your influencer community to kind of support multiple efforts across your marketing org.
Makes sense. And I think like when that question came in, probably hadn't gone through all the meat and potatoes quite yet. So tying it to what the new world looks like is super helpful. And then the second most asked question here, or upvoted questions, from Joy. So what is the best way to identify talent and get them on board to become regular creators for your campaigns?
Good question. You can start with assumptions, right? But like oftentimes we see those assumptions are wrong. We'll build influencer profiles and use like your core demographics, et cetera. But in every one of these efforts, we go broad initially. And this is broad in terms of influencer follower count. We don't even really look at engagement rate as much, because oftentimes how someone converts is not a measure of how engaged their audience is, but how qualified their audience is and aligned with them in terms of a content standpoint. So we like to go broad, and we'll see always little subgroups and communities that we would have never thought were going to be the top performing. So for example, I'll give you an example. One program we run is for Instacart. You can make assumptions as to who would use it. We found in our broad outreach that people who are fitness pros and meal planners, very small in terms of influencer reach. We're talking like 25 to 50,000 followers at the high end, but their community is looking to them for purchase decisions, looking to them on what they're going to buy on a weekly basis for their grocery list, specifically what recipes they're going to buy. And that community became the highest converting, but low in terms of influencer footprint and reach. And so that always happens, which is why you want to start broad and then go with the signal and learn as quickly as you can. And then when you see a winner, you just triple down.
Yeah. And I'll also add like social affiliate, like social influencers, like that's what we also see is like these influencers are really savvy, and some of the top performers have their own distribution strategies and have their own, their own sort of media strategies. So they'll, if we look at them only on their like influencer data points, you miss the opportunity that they may have. They may manage a group of, they may do one-to-one coaching and consulting and manage like a group of, like they have a membership program, essentially same thing. And they're giving like real tactical advice and making recommendations to, again, a high alignment, high interest group. We've got, podcasters that use social media for distribution, but that's also another channel. So there's like, you have to kind of test wide and sort of start open to sort of uncover those opportunities for the brand.
So Meredith, you started within the presentation talking about different tech platforms that you use. And like, there's a specific question here of what are your recommended partners for sourcing influencers? And then there's examples that are included. So I'm wondering if there's this piece of sourcing influencers, but just tech stack in general to give people like a laundry list that they can be quite tactical with.
Yeah. We always say like it's better just to start. So if you have a tool, you start there, obviously. But we use Sorol for our like general like list building efforts, and we then bring those lists into like our recruitment flows within other softwares. So Sorrel's one that we point to, but we've used Aspire. There are a million out there that can do that. I think the thing that's important to think through is like a social listening component. When you're recruiting people that are already talking about and mentioning the brands, being able to, Gatsby's one that we use for this. You can basically look at people that are organically talking about your brand, put a filter through that, look at them through follower counts, engagement rate, audience profile data, and then basically peel off a list of potential prospects for your like evergreen community through a program like that as well. So there are a lot out there, and like honestly, most of them are pretty good at that. But those are two big ones.
Foundational tech stack for maybe Shopify brand, Sorrel for list building, Incense for outreach, Super Affiliate to power your program as a whole, referral loyalty and all the commission tiers, Tremendous for payments, and Gatsby for social listening, and or a refunnel would be probably a cost-effective option for that as well. And then you're going to have your Klaviyo integrations, which is a huge piece of how you engage that community on the post end, like after they join. So you're going to have automation workflows, and all of that is integrated. So you can pass in events that happen inside of Super Affiliate or Gatsby into Klaviyo to fire off very tailored messaging around certain segments of your community.
Incredible. Everybody, we've come to the end of the road here. I think Meredith and Micah, I'll share the questions that are in here with you after. You two can decide to respond or the medium to get people the answers they care about. But thank you. This has been incredible. Everyone, can we show love in the chat, please? Can we just give a round of applause? There we go. The gifts make us happy. The gifts make us happy.
By the way, we're on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out directly. I'm happy to go deep on any of these topics with any of you. So feel free to say hi. Amazing.
You two, absolutely incredible. Micah, I'm happy we get to run this back. Meredith, sharing it with the world now. This is incredible. So thank you so much. Everybody who's tuned in, your eyes, your ears, we really appreciate it. The time especially, it's been absolutely incredible. Any other questions, like Micah said, let us all know when you've got your backs. Okay, everybody? Enjoy the rest of your days, nights, evenings, wherever you're at in the world, and we'll talk real soon. Thank you so much.